But students are pretty split about how to go about getting open dorms. We've got radicals, the campus activists calling for revolutionary change, starting underground papers, and then we have student government saying that they want to work within the system. Fascinating the way this works. We've got student government wanting to work within the system and trying to help the administration overcome its reservations about open dorms. The SGA Open Dorm Committee articulates the fact that yes, administration is worried about donors and parents and what they're going to think, and articulates the fact that like maybe there is us concern about emotional trauma caused by too much sex. So we get the idea that the SGA says that we got to keep talking to the administration and dealing with the fact that they are thinking this way. And then everyone comes, so you know, the issue, as all great issues at Grinnell, kind of dies out for a while. Students come back to campus in the fall of '67 to, Leda has decided this year to abolish women's hours. That's an issue that actually students work through the system and it works out for them just well. So there's no more curfews on South Campus, but there's definitely still no open visitation hours. And students come back and kind of evaluate their tactics and continue this discussion about what is the best way to get what we want from the administration. The Council of Hall presidents, following SGA's ideas back in the spring, says that we want liberal rules legally. And they say that yes, we do have serious problems with a rule that is seriously inhibitive to a desirable development of individuals who can accept or be challenged to accept the ultimate responsibility for their actions and for the respect which is due to others. But they reassert their dedication to pursue these changes initially through the existing legal system. The S&B editors write in their editorial that there's something between revolution and maintaining the status quo that we need to aim for. The S&B editors think we should go a little bit more towards the radical side of things, but that students have got to keep talking about the ways in which it is best to get stuff to the administration. Campus activists start the Grinnell student movement. They have a meeting in the coffee shop off campus, which is called Ex Loco Parentis. And they keep this underground movement going. Meanwhile, in SGA, we have the Rawson Resolution. And the president of Rawson proposes a system in which visitation hours would be decided upon by each dorm in a democratic vote. And the president of Rawson claims that this is the first proposal regarding open dorms to go through student governmental channels since '62. So we've been talking and arguing about this for a long time, but he goes, well, why don't we actually get like a joint board resolution through on this and then see where that takes us. That same week, Leggett says that yes, he's going to integrate the campuses so that men and women are both going to live on South Campus and North Campus, but that he is not moving on the open dorm issue. He goes in his speech that week and he talks about the fact that the sleeping that happened a year ago in Gates was really an example of silly college students learning that protests don't work, and that learning that, that we compromise Grinnell's institutional integrity, the media heard about it, and that he would have discussed open dorms with students had they not done these radical things. So he's trying to get students to calm down and maintain control over his unchanging stance about open dorms. This Rawson resolution passes Student Senate, but the Faculty Committee on Student Affairs does not let it go through. So we've had one attempt now in student government to fix this problem, but the administration keeps saying no. And at the same time, we can continue to see this articulation that this generation gap really exists about ideas about sex and gender. An S&B editorial says, if open dorms were extended greatly, it is our contention that visiting would become more natural and informal, that it involves groups rather than couples, and that the clandestine sexual overtones would be diminished, and its acceptance by non-participating hall members would be without reasonable objections. Students are really trying to say, this is not about sex. This is about the fact that our generation sees the fact that guys and girls can be platonic friends as really not a big problem. So that it's Leggett's view that, having some guy in your dorm room is definitely a sexual thing that really is creating this clash. So that's where we leave off when people go off for winter break. And then I have a really interesting research situation in the spring of '68. The S&B does not mention open dorms. in this article, in this S&B, flip through the page, it's open doors, open doors, open doors, and all of a sudden it stops. And so then you kind of stop and go, whoa, what happened to this issue? But it's kind of interesting to think about what's going on in the world in '68. The S&B coverage changes to national and global issues. In the spring of '68, Martin Luther King is assassinated. The presidential election is going on. LBJ has announced he won't seek re-election. Bobby Kennedy is running for president and will be killed in June. The protest happens in Colombia. The Tet Offensive is going on in Vietnam. Cobb Spring is in the spring of '68. And that students really become very concerned with a lot of other issues. But this whole time, they're clearly watching the big movements of the '60s. They're seeing students in Paris in May of '68 assert their right to student power. And so that then, when they come back in the fall of '68, we have a sudden change in the way that students have decided to talk about open dorms and visitation. So students hang on to this idea that happened in the Rawson Resolution, this idea of home rule, and the idea that students themselves would decide what the hours of visitation are. In October, the Senate passes a resolution of 24-hour open lounges and passes this to the faculty committee. And they talk about the fact that the faculty committee and as well as Senate committees are talking about really reevaluating and rewriting the rights and freedoms of students. Then, all of a sudden, the head of Langen, Catherine Carlson, decides that in Langen, she has no more visitation hours, and that she's got 24-hour open dorms. And because of the structures of self-governance that have existed back to, the 1800s, she actually can just say that, because she's in charge of those rules. And if she tells her, SA staff not to enforce them, then basically the rule no longer exists. And she says that we have open dorms based on the consideration of other people, and that she's trying to get away from what she sees as the secretiveness that has already existed. She tells a story about the fact that, on her floor, when you bring a man home, you have to go, "Man on the floor!" and everyone giggles, and it's very embarrassing. And that really this is a ridiculous situation, and that that's not necessary. The next week, Smith Hall says the same thing. Smith Hall says that each floor is going to vote on what hours guys can be on the floor, and that the president of Smith says that she cannot enforce a college rule which she feels to be unjust. So she goes, "We're self-governing, we can make our own rules, there's really no need for this